The thing is, I did not think I was controlling him. I thought I was helping him, of course. A road trip needs a simple system, and I was always better with systems than Matteo. I told myself he only looked calm because he was used to people cleaning up after him. By the time he opened that map on the hood of the car, everyone already knew I had gone too far. My name is Sloane Mercer. I was 34, and I worked as a senior operations planner for a regional events company. The thing is, I was good at making messy things simple, and I thought that made me useful in every room. Of course, useful was never the word I used when I meant necessary. At work, people gave me maps, schedules, vendor lists, weather plans, and cars that needed to be in 3 places by noon. I turned all of it into a simple system. I liked order. I liked basic order even more when other people were depending on me to create it. Matteo was different. My husband could sit with a problem for half a day and say almost nothing. He was a civil engineer, so people called that patience. I called it making everyone else guess. There had been a time when I loved that calm. Every Sunday morning, he made coffee and opened the newspaper on the kitchen table. He always pulled out the map section, folded it once, then again, and circled places we might go one day. Once, after one of my outdoor events failed in heavy rain, he drove across town with takeout, dry shoes, and no complaint. He waited in a parking lot until almost midnight because I had told him the staff still needed me. That was real. I do not deny that. But 2 days before the road trip, I watched him fold a blue paper map on our kitchen counter, and something in me tightened. I had already told him I knew the fastest way to the rental cabin. I had grown up near those roads. I knew the old highway, the back turns, the places where tourists lost time because they trusted signs more than people. Matteo asked why every suggestion from him sounded wrong to me lately. He asked it softly, like he was touching a bruise. I told him that nothing had changed. I said a trip with 6 people needed one clear voice, and common sense said that voice should be mine. Later, Bryn texted that Matteo should just listen to the logistics queen. I showed him the message, of course, because I thought it was funny. He did not laugh. He folded the blue map and put it in the glove compartment. That quiet little motion felt more disrespectful than yelling. The night before the trip, we all met at Bryn's apartment to divide snacks, chargers, and room keys. Her place smelled like lemon candles and takeout noodles, and the coffee table was covered with bags of chips that nobody needed but everyone kept adding. I stood by the kitchen island with the printed rental confirmation in my hand because of course I had printed it. A phone can die. A simple system does not die if you do it right. Bryn was there with her bright laugh and her habit of making my sharpness sound like charm. Leon sat beside Caleb on the couch, one ankle over his knee, quiet already. Nina leaned against the counter, scrolling through weather reports and asking if anyone had checked road closures. I said I had checked enough. Matteo said he had checked the route again that morning. The thing is, he said it calmly, but calm can still be a challenge when it is placed in front of other people. I heard him saying he trusted his own plan more than mine. Maybe he only meant that he had done his part. That was the problem with Matteo. He always believed his intentions should protect him from how he sounded. I told the group that Matteo once missed an exit and acted like the road had betrayed him. Bryn laughed first. Nina laughed after her. Caleb smiled, but Leon only looked down at his drink. Matteo asked what happened to the rule we had made about not turning each other into jokes in front of friends. He named the dinner from 6 months earlier, when I had corrected him over the reservation time and everyone had laughed. He asked if I remembered how quiet the ride home was after. I told him he was making one small joke sound like a court case. Then I added that if he listened the first time, I would not need to correct him in public. The room changed by 1 degree. Not enough to stop the night, just enough for Leon to stop smiling. Bryn saved me, or that was how it felt then. She said Matteo should relax because I ran events with 300 guests and no one died. She said if anyone could get us to the cabin early, it was me. That was why I loved Bryn. She understood the performance. She knew there were women who apologized to be liked and women who stayed sharp so nobody could move them. Matteo did not argue again at dinner. He only asked Nina if she wanted him to send the backup route to everyone. I answered before she could. I said nobody needed homework for a weekend trip. The next morning, the parking garage under our building smelled like dust, motor oil, and the old rain that never dried near the drains. Matteo loaded the trunk with the cooler first, then the duffel bags, then the emergency kit. He always loaded things like he was solving an equation. It should have been helpful. It irritated me because he did not ask. I told him the cooler should go on the left so we could reach it faster at the gas stop. He moved it without comment. That made me feel worse, not better. Obedience without warmth looks like judgment if you are already waiting for judgment. When Bryn arrived, she handed me a coffee and said I had command face on. I told her somebody had to. Leon and Caleb came down next, both carrying too many bags. Nina arrived last, apologizing though she was not late. Everyone circled the car, talking over each other, deciding who would sit where. I took the front passenger seat before the question could become a group discussion. Common sense, I said. I knew the roads, Matteo was driving, and the rest of them could relax. Matteo paused with his hand on the driver's door. He asked if we were going to start the trip already fighting about control. I heard the word control and felt my back go straight. I told him it was not control to prevent 6 adults from losing half a day because one man needed to feel independent. Nina looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at the trunk. Bryn gave a little laugh, but it came late. Matteo got into the car and opened the glove compartment. I saw the blue map folded inside, tucked under the registration papers. He touched it once, then started the engine. Bryn leaned between the seats and said we were lucky I was there. Matteo said nothing, and the car rolled up the garage ramp into morning light. At first, the road was easy. We had coffee, music, and the kind of jokes people make when they still believe a trip will make them closer. I pointed out the first exit before the navigation voice did. Matteo changed lanes and took it. I smiled because basic order had been restored. Then, 20 minutes later, he stayed right when I told him to move left. I said the old highway would save us time. He said the bridge near mile marker 18 was closed. I told him I had driven that way for years. He said he had checked the closure that morning. His voice was still calm. Mine was still playful enough for the back seat to pretend it was a joke. But Leon stopped talking after that. And when I turned around to tell everyone this was exactly why Matteo needed supervision, only Bryn laughed. By the second hour, the car had the heavy smell of hot vinyl, coffee breath, and sunscreen from someone's open tote bag. The morning brightness had turned flat. Fields ran past the windows, then low trees, then little towns with gas stations that looked closed even when they were open. Matteo drove with both hands on the wheel, steady and quiet, as if the road belonged to him because he had studied it. The thing is, I had not agreed to sit beside him like decoration. I was the navigator. That was the simple system. He drove. I directed. Everyone arrived early. At the split near the old highway, I told him to take the left lane. I said it before the sign. I said it clearly. Matteo stayed right. I turned toward him and asked what he was doing. He said the left would take us toward the closed bridge. He said the route he marked would keep us on the faster road. I slapped my hand against his shoulder. Not hard enough to hurt him, of course. Hard enough to make the point. I told him he never listened when listening mattered. Behind us, Bryn laughed, but it came out thin. Nina made a small sound and then covered it by opening a water bottle. Caleb shifted in his seat. Leon looked out the window. Matteo did not raise his voice. He said he had checked the closure. He said he was following the route. That quiet debrief made me angrier than a fight. I wanted him to defend himself badly so I could show everyone how stubborn he was. Instead, he gave facts. Facts are slippery when you need people on your side. I turned around and told the back seat that this was what marriage to him felt like, explaining basic order to a man allergic to being corrected by a woman. Bryn said my name softly, but not in the way she usually did when she was about to laugh with me. Matteo's jaw moved once. He kept driving. At the next road sign, I told him to change lanes. The right lane had trucks ahead. The left looked clear. He stayed where he was because, according to him, the left lane ended after the next bend. I pushed at his arm with the back of my hand. It was small. It was fast. It was the kind of thing I had done at parties when he said something too slow or too careful. But inside that car, with his hands on the wheel and everyone watching, it landed differently. The car went quiet. No music, no rappers, no side jokes from Bryn. Even the road seemed louder under the tyres. Matteo said my name once. He said it the way a person says a handrail is loose. Not angry. Warning. I told him not to act dramatic. I said if he listened, I would not need to keep correcting him. Of course, I used the word correcting. It sounded cleaner than what I was doing. He asked if I understood that he was driving 6 people and needed his arm left alone. What I heard was that he was making me look reckless. What he meant was simple. Stop touching me while I drive. But my head turned it into something else before the sentence finished. I told him that maybe he should not be driving if one small touch destroyed his focus. Nina looked down at her lap. Caleb stopped pretending to check his phone. Leon leaned forward and asked if we should pull over for a minute. Matteo said no. He said we were close to the next gas station and could stop there. That should have been the place where I stopped. There was a small opening there, thin but real. I saw Matteo's hand on the steering wheel. His thumb was pressed hard against the seam, the way he pressed his thumb into a coffee lid when he was trying not to say something. In the side window, my own face looked tight, bright, almost excited. I looked like someone performing for a crowd that had already left. For a few seconds, I understood the shape of the silence. Nobody was laughing because nobody thought it was banter anymore. They were watching me punish him in little public ways, one correction at a time. The thought came close enough to touch me. Then I closed it. I decided they were quiet because they finally understood how impossible he was. I told myself they had all seen it now. His stubbornness, his refusal, his need to make me wrong even when I was trying to help. At the gas station, everyone got out too quickly. The air smelled like hot asphalt and fried food from inside the store. Bryn usually would have walked with me, linked her arm through mine, and asked what he had done now. Instead, she said she needed the restroom and went in with Nina. Matteo stood by the pump, one hand on the roof of the car. I walked over and told him he was embarrassing me. He said very quietly that I had done that myself. I laughed because the alternative was hearing him. I told him he had a paper map and a hero complex. I told him he wanted everyone to think he was calm because calm men get praised for making women look loud. That was the first time his face changed. Not much, just enough. Leon came back with bottled water and stopped beside him. He did not say anything to me. He handed one bottle to Matteo first. After the gas stop, the seating changed without anyone asking me. Nina moved behind Matteo instead of behind me. Caleb sat behind me and kept his eyes on the window. Bryn returned to the back seat, but did not lean forward between us anymore. I kept talking because silence felt like losing. I pointed out roads. Matteo ignored the wrong ones. I made little comments about men who needed to be right. Nobody picked them up. Near a scenic pull-off, Matteo slowed. For 1 second, I thought he might stop and open the glove compartment. His hand moved toward it. His fingers touched the place where the blue map was folded away. Then he kept driving. That small choice offended me too. Even his restraint felt like a performance. I sat with my arms crossed and let the rest of the road fill with the sound of tires. The rental house sat at the end of a gravel driveway, low and wide, with dark green shutters and a porch that wrapped around one side. The sun was still high enough to make the car windows flash white. We had arrived early, not just on time, early. That should have settled something. Instead, it made me feel cornered. The thing is, arriving early did not mean Matteo was right. It meant the trip had survived him. That was how I said it to myself as I opened the passenger door and stepped onto the gravel. Of course, I made one last joke. I told everyone we were lucky to have survived my husband's driving and his antique navigation hobby. My voice was bright. Too bright. I waited for Bryn to laugh. Nobody laughed fast enough. The silence was not like the silence in the car. This one had space around it. The trees were still. The engine ticked as it cooled. Someone's suitcase wheel clicked against a stone and stopped. Matteo did not unload the bags. He opened the trunk and moved the cooler aside. Then he took out the folded blue map. I said he did not need to put on a presentation. He laid the map across the hood of the car and smoothed it with both hands. The paper had soft creases from all his folding. Red pen marked the roads in clean lines. He pointed to the old highway first. He said that was the turn I kept telling him to take. Then he moved his finger to a bridge symbol and a construction mark. He said that bridge had been closed since Monday. Caleb stepped closer. Leon came around from the back of the car. Nina stood near the porch steps, holding her water bottle with both hands. Bryn stayed by the passenger door. Matteo pointed again. He showed the road he took. He showed the mile markers. He showed the place where the trucks cleared after the bend, the lane I had demanded, the lane that ended exactly where he said it did. Then he took out his phone and showed the arrival time. Caleb checked his own phone and said Matteo had saved almost 40 minutes. The words did not hit like shouting. They landed like items on a receipt. I said normal people used phones. I said nobody brought paper maps unless they wanted to feel important. I said a route being lucky did not excuse him ignoring his wife. Matteo looked at me then. Not at the friends. Not at the map. At me. He said this was never about the map. He said it was about me needing obedience more than truth. I almost laughed because the sentence sounded too clean, too prepared. But no one else smiled. He said I kept touching his shoulder, pushing his arm, and correcting him because I could not stand being wrong with witnesses. He said I had turned a road trip into a public test of whether he would make himself smaller for me. I told him he was being dramatic again. He said I used that word when I wanted people to stop naming what happened. That was the first time I looked at Bryn and did not find her waiting for me. Her eyes were on the gravel. Inside the cabin, people chose rooms without the usual arguing. Leon and Caleb took the back bedroom. Nina asked Bryn if she wanted the twin room upstairs. They moved around me like I was a spill on the floor that nobody wanted to step in. I brought bags into the kitchen and started unpacking food because basic order gives your hands something to do. Cheese in the refrigerator, crackers on the counter, fruit in the bowl. Simple system. Common sense. If I could make the cabin look organized, maybe the scene outside would shrink. Matteo did not come in right away. Through the screen door, I saw him on the porch steps with the blue map folded beside him. His elbows rested on his knees. His head was down. He was not performing. That was what made it difficult. If he had looked angry, I could have used that. If he had blamed me loudly, I could have blamed his tone. He only looked tired. For a moment, my hand stayed on the refrigerator handle. The cold air moved over my wrist. I thought about going outside. I thought about saying that maybe I had gone too far in the car. Not because I was ready to mean it fully, but because the porch looked too quiet for a marriage. Then Matteo rubbed both hands over his face and looked toward the trees, and I decided he wanted me to see him that way. Sad, patient, injured. The good husband outside the cruel wife's kitchen. I closed the refrigerator and stacked the cups. Later, he came in and asked if we could talk alone. He said the pattern was bigger than the road trip. He named the dinner 6 months earlier, the packing that morning, the gas station, the way I had made each choice into a vote on his manhood. I told him that was convenient. I said he was collecting moments like evidence because he could not admit he was stubborn. He said he was done arguing in front of people. I heard that as a threat to take away my audience. That night, Vera called him. I was in the hallway outside our room pretending to look for my charger. The door was not fully closed. Matteo's voice was low, but the cabin was old and thin. He told his sister he did not know how to live with someone who needed him small. The sentence stayed under the door after he stopped speaking. I stood there with my charger in my hand and waited for anger to come back first. It did. Anger is loyal when shame is too heavy. Morning in the cabin came with the smell of burnt toast and wet wood from the porch. Someone had made coffee before I woke up, and nobody had saved me the first cup. That sounds small. It was small. The thing is, small things become signs when you already feel people moving away from you. I walked into the kitchen and found Nina washing a mug that was not hers. Caleb was cutting fruit. Leon was outside with Matteo near the cars. Bryn sat at the table scrolling, but she did not look up quickly enough. Of course, I went practical. I asked what the plan was for breakfast, hiking, checkout time, dinner, gas money, and cleaning duties. Basic order. Simple system. If people were uncomfortable, I could make them useful. Nina said they were thinking of taking separate cars to the trailhead later. She said it gently, but the words were not gentle. Separate cars meant separate choices. Separate choices meant I was no longer managing the day. I told her that was inefficient. Caleb said it might be easier. Easier. The words sat on the counter like a knife laid flat. Matteo came in with Leon behind him. His face had that same calm line from the drive home, from every old argument. He asked if we could talk outside for 10 minutes, away from everyone. I said everyone had already heard his map speech, so there was no need to pretend privacy mattered now. He did not answer right away. That pause made me feel like he was letting the room judge me. I hated him for giving silence so much power. Leon said maybe people should eat first. He was trying to lower the heat. I heard him choosing Matteo. So I picked up my phone and sent a voice message to the group chat while standing in the same kitchen as half the group. I said Matteo had humiliated me over a map, like a child who needed a gold star. I said he had turned a weekend away into a performance about how calm he was and how wrong I was. My thumb stayed on the record button too long. I wanted the message to be complete. I wanted the record to show I was not just taking it. The phone made its little send sound. Nina looked at me as if I had placed something dirty on the table. A few seconds later, Leon's reply came in. He did not raise his voice in the room. He wrote it where everyone could see it. He said nobody humiliated me. He said they all watched what happened in the car. I read it once and put my phone face down. Then I turned on Matteo. I said he made decisions alone and expected everyone to call it calm. That was true. I knew it was true as soon as I said it. Matteo did not share every thought. He planned silently, adjusted silently, protected people silently, and then stood there as if the result should explain the process. He had done it with the route. He had done it with money. He had done it with family plans. He had done it with his own hurt. He did not refute me. He said I was right about that. He said he should have explained more. He said he should have told me before the trip exactly why he marked that route and why he was worried about the bridge. Then he said being right about his silence did not make me right about punishing him. That sentence had no place to go. It stayed between us. Bryn pushed her chair back and said she was going upstairs to shower. She did not touch my shoulder when she passed. She did not make a face behind anyone's back. She only left. Matteo asked again for one private conversation. He said no friends, no jokes, no votes. He said if I could sit with him for 20 minutes without trying to win, maybe we could find one honest place to start. That was his final clean offer. I did not know that then. I only knew everyone had gone still, waiting to see whether I could accept a door without turning it into a stage. I said I would not be put on trial by a man who needed a paper map to feel important. Matteo nodded once. Not agreement. Not forgiveness. A note taken inside his own head. He said he would handle things properly from now on. No legal words. No threat. That made it worse. A threat gives you something to fight. His tone gave me a closed office door. The rest of the trip became logistics. Matteo carried bags, checked the cabin instructions, filled the tank, and confirmed the return route with Leon instead of me. I called that childish. I called it avoidance. I told Bryn in a text that he was punishing me with silence. Bryn did not answer. I texted again from the passenger seat before we left, then once more from the gas station. 3 messages. 1 red receipt. Nothing else. The smallness of it made it humiliating. Bryn had laughed with me at dinner, in cars, at parties, in bathrooms where women told the truth and then fixed their lipstick. Now she gave me a blank screen. On the ride home, I tried a new tactic. I softened my voice. I told Matteo maybe we had both been stressed. I said I knew he felt disrespected, but I had only been scared we would lose time and disappoint everyone. It was a controlled, partial truth. I gave him 1 inch and expected him to walk back the rest. He asked if scared was why I called him disobedient. I said he was twisting words. He said nothing after that. The car was smaller on the way home. Bryn rode with Nina and Caleb in Leon's car. Matteo and I drove alone. The empty back seat made every sound clearer. The blinkers, the tires, my bracelet tapping against the cup holder. I kept talking because silence felt like a room I had been locked inside. I explained the route I would have taken. I explained how my family knew those roads. I explained that if he had told me properly, I would have listened. Of course, even then, I made his silence the first crime. Matteo confirmed fuel, distance, arrival time, and nothing else. When we reached our apartment garage, he parked straight between the lines, turned off the engine and sat for a moment. Then he opened the glove compartment. He took out the folded blue map. I asked if he was going to frame it. He did not answer. He got out, closed the door, and did not bring the map inside. 10 days later, I sat in a family law mediation office with beige walls, a glass pitcher of water, and a clock that ticked too loudly for such an expensive room. The thing is, I thought we were there because Matteo finally wanted a structured conversation. Of course, I was good at structure. Give me rules, give me a table, give me a neutral person, and I could turn emotion into basic order. Ms. Harlan placed a folder in front of me. Matteo sat across the table with his hands folded. Leon sat near the wall, not beside me, not beside him. The first page was a petition for divorce with temporary financial and property orders. The first hearing date was 3 weeks later. I uncapped my pen, then capped it again. My hand moved to the water glass, but I did not drink. The room smelled like paper, mint gum, and printer heat. I said this was extreme because the road trip had been one stupid fight. Matteo did not answer with pain. He answered with documents. There were route screenshots, a photo of the marked blue map, the group chat messages, and a transcript from the dashcam audio. My own words were there in plain lines. Disobedient. Never listens. This is what I live with. Leon's written statement said the car went silent after I pushed at Matteo's arm and kept correcting him while he was driving. I told Ms. Harlan I had been stressed because I knew the better route. She looked at the map photo, then asked why the better route was the one with the closed bridge. There was no clean answer, not even from me. Matteo said he was not asking me to agree. He was informing me that the marriage was over. Then he stood, gathered his copy of the folder, and left the emotional argument before I could pull him back into it. The short-term rental had white blinds that never closed evenly. Joint accounts were limited to approved expenses until the temporary orders hearing. Leon stopped inviting me to group plans. Nina answered only practical messages, and Caleb removed me from the vacation album. Matteo communicated only through scheduled mediation messages and refused every emotional call. At work, I corrected a vendor in front of 2 assistants and saw the same look from the car pass between them. The thing is, I thought obedience would prove I mattered. I thought if Matteo followed me, everyone would see I was the reason things worked. Of course, I called it order. I called it common sense. But the map showed something I could not talk over. He did not need my directions to arrive. I needed his obedience to feel necessary. The last time I saw the blue map, it was folded on the passenger seat of his car. He drove away without asking me which way to turn.